Meeting to order of the Blackhawk County Board of Supervisors work session for January 13th, 2022. Roll call vote.
Leyland,
Here.
Little,
Here.
Schwartz,
Here.
Trelka,
Here.
White.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have the agenda received as proposed or as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Budget work session, discussion, possible board action, consideration of all aspects of the fiscal year 23 Blackhawk County budget. James? floor
Good
is
morning.
yours.
Good morning. So today we originally had our ARP discussions, the current valuations and current levy implications, as well as any other remaining topics. On Tuesday, we didn't get to some outside agencies, so I want them to go ahead and kind of kick it off, and then we can move into our current valuations and current levies, move into the ARP, and then end with any remaining topics. So if there's someone online that wants to kind of kick it off, that would be great.
Barb, you want to start? Prather?
Yes, I will start. Good morning. First, I want to thank the County Board of Supervisors for the support they've given the Northeast Iowa Food Bank since its inception in 1981. We are celebrating our 40th anniversary, which unfortunately for many in our community, there is still food insecurity, and our goal and our mission is to ensure that people have access for food. In the early days of the food bank, which we started as a food pantry, and still operate that program today, along with many other programs that fight hunger and food insecurity in our community. And what I would like to say is, we were funded out of the community service budget originally, and then when landfill dollars became available, we were asked to apply through that route. Rent and utilities is still funded out of community service dollars versus the funding route food was asked to take. We were happy to partner, we were happy to change because I really appreciated, and we really appreciated the support the county gave to us. And so that's why when landfill dollars went away, we continued to apply because there is need in our community. 2 years ago when the pandemic hit, our agency was hit really hard. And we were able to adapt in 48 hours to provide services. And we partnered with multiple of organizations in the community, as we always have, but especially with the county, the community service, with the services, with the sheriff's department, with Blackhawk County Health Department. Anybody who needed food in this community, we were able to step up and provide that food, whether it was through another nonprofit organization like Embark, like Operation Threshold, like a food program that happened up in Janesville that was feeding their community. We were called upon and we delivered on that. At the same time, we moved to curbside for our pantry operation, and we can't, and in order to meet the need. We are back now inside serving people. And I'm happy today that the numbers that we saw 2 years ago are down because of all the federal government supports that are available to families in need. If those supports go away, our numbers will go back up. We know that. The food bank is about accountability. We are inspected by a multitude of different organizations, from Feeding America to the American Institute of Baking, to DHS and the like, to ensure that we use our resources in the most efficient way. And your dollars help us accomplish our mission. The food bank doesn't purchase, we do purchase food, but the bulk of what we do is rescue food and keep it out of the landfill. It was well over 3 million pounds of food that we kept out of the landfill last year. And we distributed over 10 million pounds of food. And distributed that through our network of agencies in 16 counties. And so anything that's done we strive to be as efficient as possible. So the dollars you give us help us recoup that food. Two questions I often get is the funding used for salaries, and do other counties support us? One, the funding that you give us helps us operate those programs. We can't do a lot of it without staff support. Pandemic, one of the things that happened to us is that volunteer support has backed off because people want to be safe, and we understand that. We need staff to ensure that we're in compliance with our regulatory bodies, and that we're operating the food bank as efficiently as possible so we can operate. If we don't pass our inspections, if we don't pass our audits, we don't access the food that we're giving to us. So in a roundabout way, yes, it does, because it helps us provide the services. The other thing that I will say about other counties is a lot of the other counties support the food pantries in their area, such as Grundy County supports Operation Threshold to operate the food pantry. And so we did, during the pandemic, reach out to Floyd County, and they were our sponsor for a CDBG grant to bring in state CDBG money to help us operate our mobile pantries in those outlying communities. But generally, county support is left at the local level. But then in turn, they're able to access, those agencies are able to access our resources because of that. Your support is vital to what we do because it shows that you're a partner, you're invested in us, and you believe in what we do. And we can't do what we do without the support of the community, and so we greatly appreciate everything that you've done. And I strongly encourage you to continue to support the food bank and contract with us. So if something happens, yes, we have the daily crisis of hunger that happens on a regular basis, but if something happens, again, we're ready to go and we can meet the need along the way. And I'm open to questions that you may have with us.
Barb, one question I got for you. How has it changed for the amount of, like, I give you $1, how much food can you get for the $1 now? I know.
So for every $1 that's donated, we can provide 4 meals back to the community. And that's based on audited numbers that are given to us, the audit that we have. So if you give us $1, we can provide 4 meals back to the community.
Thank you.
Barb, I guess a question I have is regarding, and we've had some discussion on that before, accountability, in that when we provide financing to you, some funds to you, how we know that those dollars are spent.
I think it froze up.
It did freeze.
It froze up.
Well, our 990 is available, and we provide that. We're completely transparent. Any question that you have for us, we will answer.
Barb, do you have employees that require certification, like forklift drivers and those with CDLs?
Yes, we have a fleet of 5 trucks. One needs a Class A CDL. The others need a Class B, I believe. I think it's a Class B. But yes, they do require Class CDL drivers. Anybody who operates our forklifts and pallet jacks needs to be trained properly and have the proper training and certification. We're required to have a CPA on staff. And so there's all kinds of certifications. Food safety training is big for us, so all of the staff has to go through food safety training, and some are even serve safe managers. So we have a level of certifications that people have to meet in order to meet the qualifications for our governing bodies.
Any other questions?
Yeah, last year, as you're probably well aware, the state auditor had sent a directive out to us reminding all counties, I think, in the state of Iowa about funding that we would provide, that we couldn't just provide dollars to nonprofits unless they were providing public services to the community. And I wondered if you've had any experience with other counties or what that's been for you, and how you've addressed that or how they've addressed that with you.
So any governing body any government, relationship that we have an agreement with. For example, we contract with DHS, to distribute TPAP commodities, for our area. We receive CARES Act money, and that's a part of a, contract agreement that we have. If we enter into a contract, we'll agree to do certain things, in return for the dollars, and we provide follow-up reporting, whether it's the Child and Adult Care Food Program, whether it's the TPAP commodity program, the State CARES Act we got, the CDBG funding. We have an agreement with the City of Waterloo, an agreement with the City of Cedar Falls, all of those. So we do have entered into agreements to provide the services in exchange for the money.
And I know you were in the audience when we were discussing that probably a month or so ago, as far as us as a county and the services that we had designated dollars for fiscal year 22. Of course, you were one of those. And I think we've had some other discussions since that time and considering that and what we would do on that. So as far as providing services for us, that information for us to have a contract with you, that would be something that you'd be open and receptive to then, it sounds like, based on previous performance.
Yep, we would agree to do certain things in exchange for the money to ensure that people in Black Hawk County have access to food.
And then I'm assuming too, as far as accountability, when we were talking about that, you may, if it's that the board would like that, to have you present or give updates or that type of thing too, you'd be more than happy to do that.
Yep, anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Barb, did you ever get the kitchen going there? You know, I know when we built the new facility, we were gonna have a kitchen in there, that we were gonna do some type of food preparation. Is that up and going?
Yes, that's our Kids Cafe program. We provide on a daily basis meals and snacks to the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, YWCA, Salvation Army, kids programs, to name a few. And we're probably providing about 150 hot meals today, and then another 200 to 300 snacks on a daily basis. It's all prepped and processed through our kitchen. And goes out. In the summer, we're doing the same with summer feeding. We provide breakfast and lunch to various sites throughout the community. The other thing that we just did with Black Hawk County Department of Health over Christmas, they used our kitchen because it is licensed. They used our kitchen to process squash and freeze it. I don't know exactly the quantities that they did, but we entered into an agreement with them to do that, and we hope to do more of that in the future. One of the things that we added after the building was built is we have a clean room, but then about 4 or 5 years ago, we added a cold feature to that where we can repack frozen product. Because we are licensed as a processing facility, we can repack that. But it really helped us out, especially in the pandemic, because all this food was being thrown away because restaurants were closed. A lot of that was donated to us, and with the help of volunteers, including the National Guard, we were able to take that product and pack it into frozen boxes for easy distribution. And so we've tried to be innovative with the kitchen as well as with our clean and cold room to ensure that food is not going in the landfill, that it's being reused and being distributed to the community.
Thank you. Any other questions for Barb?
Barb, I just have one question. This is Tom. Are you currently receiving any new monies from the state or federal government in regards to food pantries or any programs that they're funding right now?
There's additional dollars. There's been additional dollars for TFAP. There's a couple grants out there that we're applying for. One is about capacity building. Our focus on that one will be in a couple of the rural counties that we have. The other one, we're waiting for the regulations to come out on that to know exactly how that's going to go. But that we'll be able to potentially. Just on what I've seen, potentially access more food, especially local foods through that. We have been given State CARES Act money. Some of it has been gone through the past. The pork program as well as Beef Up Iowa that were done through the Department of Agriculture a year ago, and that money was indirectly, we received food indirectly for that. But then also for some of our food purchases, we have also received state CARES Act money. And every type of government support we have, it's all divided out which program it goes to. It doesn't go into a big pot. Expenses are allocated. So if the county gave us money, none of those expenses would be duplicated, if that makes sense. So we're responsible for allocating all of that out. So if we're billing the county for services, that money will be backed out before we bill you.
Okay, thank you.
Again, any more questions for Barb? Okay, thank you, Barb.
Mr.
Now-
Chair.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Now the other Barb. Barb Grant, you're up.
Yes, good morning. I'm Barb Grant with Operation Threshold 1535 Lafayette. During the discussions, there have been some comments about accountability, and I just felt it was really important that that people get an understanding of accountability in nonprofits. You know, we are businesses. We happen to be not-for-profits, but we are businesses. And we're critical to the fabric of and well-being of the community. Generally, we're highly regulated, highly monitored. For example, Operation Threshold in a given year will have 20 to 30 outside monitors come in and monitor. It's a little different during the pandemic. There have been many more remote monitorings, but we're still heavily monitored. We have an outside independent audit. In the 20 years I've been with Operation Threshold, we've had one finding and it was for a handful of typographical errors in one program. We have credential programs where the credentialing body comes in, they monitor and evaluate not only the program, but also the overall agency operations. They meet with our board, aside from staff, and interview them. They interview clients, they interview some of the program staff. As a community action agency, we're required to meet 58 standards that all community action agencies across the country are required to meet. These standards apply to board operations, fiscal operations, human resources operations, as well as programming standards. You know, in order to do what we do, we can't do it without professional staff. We're required to have staff with college degrees from many of our positions. We have accountants, social workers, dietitians, nurses, HR professionals, and one staff has a law degree. We have staff with specialized trainings that they're required to get certifications in order to do the jobs that they do. So we can have, for example, somebody that has their master's in social work or their master's in counseling, but they still have to go get a certification in order to provide some of our home visitation services. And without having these standards and without having the staff capacities that we do have, we wouldn't have received about $10.5 million in federal funds last year in federal fiscal year 21. We wouldn't have provided approximately $7.5 million in client assistance in that same fiscal year, and we wouldn't have served more than 12% of the population of our 3-county service area. Again, we're a business that happens to be a not-for-profit, but we're every bit as accountable as for-profits, and maybe more so. And we're not afraid of accountability. I think we struggle with what information people want. We have it all. I can tell you we have more data than anyone would want. However, you know, we don't want to burden people either. You know, we're happy to answer any questions. We're happy to provide whatever information anybody wants. And I think that, you know, Barb's listed a number of the grants and contracts that they have. We have a ton as well, local, state, federal funding, and service contracts. And, you know, we're happy to offer any expertise or help to the county as you design an accountability system that meets your needs. You know, we understand that folks want accountability, and so we're happy to help in any way we can to, you know, help you design a system that isn't overly burdensome for you, isn't overly burdensome for agencies, and gets everybody what it is that they want and they need. So I just wanted to say that I've just had a concern about the fact that there were concerns about accountability. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Bart, I've got a question. Don't we currently have a contract with you?
You do not. So we, in community services, yes, we're one of the 3 agencies that distributes the general assistance funds, and yes, we have a contract, and Colleen comes and monitors us regularly.
Yeah, and that's for rental, heat, and water, if I'm correct on that.
Right, rent and utilities.
But I believe we have a contract with all 3 agencies, right?
Correct. And like I said, Colleen comes and monitors as well. She pulls client files. She makes sure that the documentation that's supposed to be there is there, that people really did meet the guidelines, and so.
And the way that referral works is people go to Operation Threshold, EMA, or Jesse Cosby. If they qualify for the services, then the voucher is sent over to Community Services. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you know how many Operation Threshold sends over in a year?
I can't tell you. I know that we do less than Jesse Cosby and EMA because we've got the Federal Energy Assistance Program, and we process about 5,000 applications. About not even 1,000 of those are from Grundy and Buchanan counties, so the rest are all here in Blackhawk. And we have a staff of 4 that do that, and the applications come in primarily in October, November, and December. We back off, and if we have somebody in our office that has a need that county can help with, we'll process that, but otherwise we generally pause during that period. Obviously, we would have crisis utility assistance if we need to help get somebody connected. But given the large volume of federal utility assistance that's come into the community because of the pandemic, we have not done very many. But I'm sorry, I can't give you numbers. I could give you numbers in about 10 minutes, or 5 minutes after we're done talking. But
No, that's fine. Thank you.
uh-huh.
Chair, can I make a suggestion for the board to consider in regard to public purpose options based upon our past actions and the needs of the community and this need and the utilization of these funds? I've broken the needs down into 5 different categories. Some are quite lengthy, but I just want to throw them out there so the board can discuss them, consider them, and see if this is a suggestion we can follow. But the first one is, number 1 is stable and secure housing, including but not limited to legal services, rent assistance, heating and utility assistance, and mortgage assistance. Number 2 is nutrition and hunger. Number 3 is education, job training, basic skills training, and special needs training and assistance. Number 4 is employment opportunities and economic development. And number 5 is crisis prevention and assistance, violence prevention, and assistance for victims. I came up with these talking to others, again, based on our past actions. I frequently look at the board behind you. I like to use that as an umbrella of what our duties and resources we should provide fall under, and I just want to throw these out there for the board to consider. I do support public purpose option funding. Like I said, based on our past actions, based on our current needs, and based on what's going on in the world today, I just felt that these are 5 general needs that we could potentially identify and let the nonprofits know that these are where we need help, this is where we need assistance. What can you provide for us in regard to these matters? And ask them to submit contract proposals or whatever for us to consider, and then vote up or down on them.
Well, there probably are some additional ones to the 5 even that you mentioned that we might want to consider or discuss. So were you proposing, I guess, that maybe at the next board meeting or something, we put on an agenda item for the discussion and board action?
I mean,
On this
what
type
would
of
be
thing?
the best way to proceed procedurally?
Well, I think, number one, we had two issues. We had the fiscal year '22, that whether we want to continue funding, to fund those, and what the particular specifics are for those. But that would certainly need to fall into those categories that you said, what we would identify going forward, that they do fall into that. So that would be one of the actions, and then also them, and then going forward into fiscal year '23 or whatever future years.
And I do support funding these for fiscal year '22, because I'm the guy that still believes in a handshake agreement, and we made a commitment to these nonprofits to provide them with funding. And I personally feel it's our obligation to honor that commitment. I know a couple probably fell off.
Because they didn't meet the qualifications.
Right.
That, not our fault. But yeah.
But still, these others are here before us. They had relied upon that funding, and I want to honor that commitment. And then I also want to discuss providing them funding for fiscal year 2023.
Well, we were supposedly looking at least for dollar amounts that we were putting in the budget, so we could make that discussion or have that discussion later
For 23.
for going forward for '23.
Right.
So if we have the dollar amount, unless we want to change that in the budget process.
You have an amount for 22 that the people that you want to.
I think it's right around 50 grand total.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's
It was like
it's on the screen.
56 or
I actually just put it up
53.
there.
Okay.
So there's actually two agencies that don't or didn't actually say that they were going to provide a service. And so if you pull those two specific ones out, you're at 53,000.
And I know Operation Threshold had missed the deadline or something happened, but this is also an opportunity for them to get back on board for fiscal year 2022.
You mean tell?
Which ones dropped off, James?
The two that were not requesting help with a service were the one North Star and Friends of Iowa. Friends of Iowa was looking for dollars to upgrade their technology, and North Star was looking for dollars to update their parking lot.
So I'm not sure, like I said, to actually ask some to reconsider, that seems like we maybe are opening the door for others to do that rather than the previous commitment. I don't know. Not that I.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you gotta follow the rules, and you have rules, and if you open the door, then every other agency has the right to apply for that FY '22, so.
That's a good
I think
point.
you gotta stick with the ones that
Follow the
that
rules.
actually qualified, and we adopted, and then discuss whether we're gonna fund each one of those.
And our options for funding, I mean, there are some, we have the fund balance, and I strongly support that. I think that's a good way to proceed. But also, there are other needs that have arisen that we could rely upon ARP funds, like the Dolly Parton Initiative, Grow Cedar Valley. I mean, they've submitted a very nice strategic plan and contract that I favor. But I mean, utilization of ARP funds it's been a godsend for us to do what we can in our community.
So I'm not sure if we can take a vote on this today to stick to the kind of handshake agreement that we made for fiscal year '22 with these agencies that did submit proposals that would qualify under the state auditor. But if not, we can place that on the agenda for Tuesday, because I want to make sure we meet those commitments that we made, because we were all operating under the same false pretense, and so none of us are really to blame, certainly not the agencies, and we want to honor those commitments. And I would like to see us place, if for levy purposes, if we want to place a placeholder of at least 100,000 in the budget today. But I'm also open to, since our reserves are so strong, if we just enter into a plan that every year we're budgeting at least 100,000 to 200,000 out of reserves for public purpose dollars. And then as these proposals come in, we can make the decision of whether this falls under funding that we can use for ARP dollars or out of the public purpose dollars that we're going to be budgeting for each year.
Mike, we can't vote
I
on that.
think, it sounds like we got kind of a difference on taking it out of the reserves or out of the tax askings. So we can take action today on that, Chris. That's what the item says down below. I would make a commitment for further years because I'm not going to commit another board to something. I think it's something that has to be done yearly. We just have to determine how much we're going to put in. I would go as far as make a motion that we allocate $100,000 for FY23 and take it out of the reserves for fiscal year 23.
I'll second that motion. Do we have any further discussion on that?
Yes, I mean, when it comes to reserves, in our past discussion in regard to reserves, I think all of us had agreed that they're incredibly healthy. As a matter of fact, what, 26 million is a substantial amount, and that's money that we taxed our citizens for, and we put it in the bank. I just
So you,
I don't like having that amount of money sitting there, and I like the proposal to pull money out of the reserves because every year we talk about lessening the amount. And I don't want to say spending down, but lessening that amount. Because it seems like every single year we're taking fund balance and putting it into reserves, correct? And it just builds and builds and builds and builds.
well, until we do something with it or use it for special
Yeah,
projects, that's what
that's-
happens. Yeah.
Let's utilize it for
Like
the
a
needs of our
savings.
community. I think it's a fiscally responsible way to spend these, or utilize these funds, not spend, utilize them. Because we're all taxpayers sitting here and we got to be wise and prudent in how we,
But like Dan indicated, to be honest with you, that reserve fund is so high that if I was, and I am a taxpayer, you're actually using my money when I could be using that here at my household. There's no reason to have reserves that high. I was always told it was between 25 and 32%, and we're sitting at what, 73%? That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
it is.
Well, we've had some different years that have caused some of that too. I was going to say just recently, and some of the things that have occurred with COVID and CARES Act money and different things. So some of those reserves were really added to with money that we were given and need to determine what we want to use them or how we want to use them. But
Well, the bottom
No.
line is still there at 73% today as you talk, so.
yep,
To be talking about putting $100,000 towards the tax levy when we can take it out of the reserves, to me, doesn't make much sense.
oh, I would agree, and we can do it, like you said, $100,000 out of 26 million's going to not make too big a difference, unfortunately, on our reserves, but no, I think we're all in support of that, and I certainly support too, as much as it would be nice to make multiple year commitments to the organizations, I think we're doing our due diligence by looking at it annually and looking at reserves every year and looking at what we can do and not necessarily committing us to maybe 100,000. I know, Chris, what you're speaking of is being able to make those commitments regularly or being on a kind of expectations of everyone of what we're doing. But I think annually is still a good way to go for all of us to have the discussion. So, no,
Yes.
I think it's fine. There's no disagreement, I don't think, on this board then probably to use the $100,000 from reserves at all.
I just want clarification. Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
I think, go ahead, Craig.
I just wanted clarification. There are some other needs we have that we could utilize ARP funds for, correct? So this 100,000 is outside of.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm ready to vote.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Veeder?
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
Yes,
Schwartz,
Yes.
Jelka,
Yes.
White.
Yes. Resolution adopted.
It's an easy one.
Sounds good. So we will, we can talk about FY22 at a different meeting, but moving forward for FY23, I have $100 or 100,000 allocated out of fund balance, and I adjusted those numbers, and so we will present our current valuations and our current levy with that adjustment on there. So.
James, I have one question. You mentioned
sorry, go
having
ahead.
the remaining topics to be determined. What exactly did you want to put in that? Otherwise, I was thinking, just because we'd had some discussion on it early on, and maybe this isn't the time you want to discuss it, but that Middle Cedar Watershed Management Authority request from us, I was going to say, and I think Dan was going to check into it further or look into it a little bit more. That was something they were asking
I was
about.
going to touch on that a little
Okay.
bit.
And I don't know if you want that now or to be determined subject.
So what?
Go ahead.
So the letter, the letter was actually from the Wassapinican Watershed Management Authority, but we have, and that's the one that Dan serves on. I serve on the Middle Cedar River, and I've got some documentation I'm going to send to everybody today. We have a $5,000 request. We've got information on how we came to that level, but also information on all the different entities that have already committed to it. And I'm proposing, because where I see watershed and soil health funding, the trends are positive right now in the federal government. It's just necessary to kind of keep the lights on so that people are getting the grants and levying those dollars effectively. And so, but I think it would be probably an appropriate thing for fund balance as well. And so I think that if I remember correctly, the Wassapinican one was around 2,000 or 2,500, I can't remember. And this is a $5,000 request. The other one that we're a member of is the Upper Cedar River, but they don't have a specific funding level request. So I was going to send some documentation to everybody today. I meant to do it earlier, but things have just kind of changed a little bit for me. And so, but it's something I think is appropriate to use fund balance for.
I agree on both of them, and the other one is basically the same venture to administrate grants, track progress. I can't remember the amount though. I can't remember if it was 2,500 or 2,000.
Chris, I think those are probably two important areas. We've had talks on these before. And I don't have a problem with those two requests, the 2,500 or the 5,000. The only thing that I would support is voting on that being an annual thing. I think that should be addressed each year again, just like the other items are, because, you know, it's kind of ironic to sit here and say how high our reserves are, and we could be sitting here tomorrow or next week or next month, and they could take a big plummet, because we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen. Heck, the federal government may come back and say they want to let our money back. Who knows? So I think that's a good request, but I would say that's going to have to be discussed on a yearly basis, annually at budget time.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too, because it's also seeing, you know, sometimes these bodies could change. I mean, so the study on a body that doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
So absolutely, it should be a yearly discussion. I've got some good documentation. I'll send everybody after the meeting today.
Would the board support plugging $7,500 in for these two positions, or support for these two positions with the money
out of the reserves?
Yes.
And I think, let me double check. I think ours from the Middle Cedar River might have been 5,400. So if we could just add, let me double check.
$8,000. So $8,000 would be a logical amount.
Well, 5,000's the one, was, the Middle Cedar was 5,077, correct?
I think I'm going to
I
get that number.
I'm pretty sure.
Right. I think you're correct, Linda.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we had that in here somewhere.
And if it happens to be, it's 577, and so 577 plus 2,500 is more than 8,000. But if we say 8,000 at this point on the lower amount of position, they would get 2,377 or whatever that.
And with this being coming out of fund balance, that doesn't need to be decided today by any means. I mean, that's something that, you know, and that's
But we
gonna
can
be
agree
something
to take it
that
out of fund balance.
Absolutely, yep. And if that's the route that you want to go, very similar to these ARP discussions today, none of these discussions are going to affect the levy, and so we can move forward in our budget process. And if I'm looking at if I pull up my schedule, I won't actually have to have those expenditures with the fund balance reduction. I won't need that until you know, extremely late January, early February. So, I mean, we can hold off on those. We can plug those in. So.
Okay.
The middle Cedar River amount is $5,077.
So it's 20.
Oh,
Yeah.
So it's 70,
gotcha.
75, 77.
Okay.
But that doesn't matter. So do we need a motion today probably to fund that?
You don't have to. You can if you would like, but you don't have
I'd
to.
like to make a motion just because they'd
Yeah.
be happy for the victory, and then our commitment helps leverage commitments from other local governments.
Yeah, I saw they were doing another request or trying to get
Right.
people to respond. So, yeah. Okay, great.
Do I have a second?
I'll offer a motion.
Okay, second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. Beater.
Are we using the $8,000 figure, or are we going to use a more exact figure?
8,000.
8,000.
Little,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Jelka,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
White.
Yes, resolution adopted.
Perfect. I'm going to move on to our valuations and how they changed from last year to this year. If you look on the screen, or if you have a handout in front of you, I'm looking at the second chunk of numbers here, which is the total 100% valuation comparison. If you look at the far right, you're going to look at the percentage increase. Our residential valuation increased 7.5%. Egg land went down 3.25%. Egg buildings went up 6.24%, and so on and so forth. When those are calculated in, the state issues out a rollback percentage, and so that is the percentage that is taxable that we can use when we set our levy. And so if you look at the percentage that was issued in 2021 for the 2023 taxes, the rollback went down by 2.27%. And what that means is that's just less taxable dollars that we can pull out. If you look at the percentages going down, you'll see based off of each property class how the state determined the rollback. So if you go back to the top here, you'll look at the taxable valuation comparison. So if you're looking at that, the residential grew by just under 3%. Again, that went from the 7.51% included with the rollback decrease, so it's less of a dollar amount that we can use for taxable valuation. That brought the 7.51% down to about 3%. You'll look at the changes for egg land and egg buildings. Commercial increased, multi-residential decreased a little bit, and then you have your railroads and your utilities. Our overall valuation, if you look at the very bottom, increased by 3.33%, and that is directly helping with that levy rate as well. So if you have any questions, if not, I will just move on to where we are currently at after everyone's proposal that we have thus far, and answer any questions and kind of open it up for discussion.
Move on.
Okay,
Hearing no questions.
perfect.
James, we're heading to, I thought Dan wanted to talk about capital. That's going to affect what you're going over right now, isn't it?
It is. So what I wanted to do was provide where we are currently at. So I have to stop share here. What I want to do is, after everybody presents, I wanted to get where we were currently at. And if you wanted to adjust from there, you can, and we can make this a discussion where I can change these levy amounts. I can look at these dollars. If you want to, pull something out, that's fine. I can show you exactly where that's going to impact the levy and the percentages. So I just wanted to get you guys a good idea of, after every item that these departments put forward, where we are currently at, and go from there. That's where I just wanted to create this baseline. So right now, with our tax askings, we are overall lowering our urban tax askings by 9.94%. That is $3,641,590. That is decreasing from the total urban, and our rural is increasing by 20,762. If you combine those totals, we are decreasing our total tax askings by 3,620,828, or a 9.09% decrease in our levy. Or excuse me, in our tax askings. If you scroll down to our levy for the urban is decreasing by 12.73%, or 81 cents. And our rural basic is decreasing by 2.53%, for a total decrease on the county for 9.14%, or a decrease of 89.9 cents. This is going to be the effect on your residential homeowners. They're going to see a decrease of 16.25% for your residential. And this is given the $100,000 value scenario. For rural, they're looking at a 12.81% decrease. Commercial, you're looking at a 12.73% decrease. It's going to be the same for industrial. Ag is looking at a 5.76% increase, and that is, if you look at the rollback, that's our biggest change in our rollback is the 5%. So there's a big increase in that rollback that's causing that increase. Multi-residential is decreasing by 17.58%. So that is where we are currently at right now with everybody's initial ask, the capital where it's at, transfers where they're at. And again, I just wanted to provide a baseline for you. If you wanted to see any scenarios, any differences, if you wanted to look at capital more specifically, we can do that. I just wanted to provide a baseline of where we're at currently.
Well, the capital I wanted to discuss was utilizing ARP funds to bring consolidated dispatch out of the basement. That is, what impact does that have on the levy?
If we were to use ARP funds, it wouldn't have any effect on the levy.
Right.
So that can be a later discussion.
Correct.
As far as when we do that.
Correct.
Are you okay with that?
Yes,
This doesn't affect it?
absolutely.
Yep.
It's something I wanted to make the board aware, if they're agreeable, that's a discussion involving many dynamics that I want to have in the future.
Yeah.
Yep, and that would be just using ARP dollars. So again, the ARP dollars is going to be just a complete transfer out of fund balance, because we do have those funds currently. So those aren't going to affect the levy at all. Absolutely.
James, I got a question. I'm always confused on the way it's presented. For FY23, the commercial backfill is going to be how much are we getting?
$877,000.
Okay. And are you budgeting any money for commercial backfill?
$877,000.
Oh, isn't that 1.6 million you're budgeting for commercial backfill?
No.
If we're getting 800 and some thousand for the backfill, and you're budgeting 800, are you budgeting tax 800 and some $1,000?
No. So what that backfill does is it just we receive it as revenue, and it directly offsets tax askings by just revenue. So what that $877,000 is going to show us on our revenue side is just going to completely offset $877,000 of expenditures. So That's as simple as it just literally offsets our expenditures. So when we were budgeting 500,000, but we were still receiving the million, we were receiving, I mean, we were just receiving an extra $500,000 in revenue that we weren't expecting, and that was pretty consistent for a few years.
That's why your budget or your reserves are so high. You're putting $500,000 in current.
Yep, and that was the conversations that we had because we were receiving $1 million, we were budgeting 500,000, and that was in an effort because if they got rid of that commercial backfill, then the hit to the county would have just been 500,000 rather than a full $1 million. And so we were trying to hedge that loss or the potential loss. We were trying to hedge that to the county, and unfortunately they kept on receiving or kept on giving it to us, and then finally they came out with this 6-year phase out that allows us to directly budget exactly how much we're going to be receiving, and so that is helping with the lower of the levy as well.
Yeah.
So we're actually not budgeting any money for the commercial backfill.
Well, we're receiving it on the revenue, so
So I understand that, but you're not actually taxing for any more money than the 800,000 we're getting from the state.
exactly. Yep, and that's the benefit of having the phase out is we know exactly how much we can offset for expenditures.
Jake, just to clarify, what is the total impact of the rollback? Is it still in that $1 million range, meaning that we technically still are budgeting some, 60 some thousand or something? Or what is do you have the total impact that the commercial rollback has on our taxes? Is
I
that
thought it was 1.2 million, Chris, at one time.
right? And so there would be a difference between that 800 some thousand that we are receiving.
No, so let me clarify. So this is for FY23. For FY22, we budgeted 500,000, and we are going to be receiving, I believe it's just shy of $1 million. So for FY22, we are still in this scenario where we did try to hedge our losses, but we are receiving more dollars than what we budgeted for, and that's for FY22. For FY23, we're not going to be budgeting any more revenue than what we're going to be receiving. So those are going to be those aren't going to be just dollars going to be going towards our general fund. Does that help, Chris?
What is still the total impact that the rollback has in as far as a dollar amount? Knowing that we're receiving the 800 some thousand back, does that cover the total impact or not?
I guess let me.
I think what Chris is talking about is if they hadn't come up with these artificial numbers for what we're going to receive, and we were just basing this on the impact of reducing commercial industrial property values to 90% rollback when it was 100% before, what would that impact be? And I think that's that you can determine that based on where we were when the backfill situation started, but then you also have to take into account what the legislation anticipated, which was a growth in commercial and industrial valuation because of that assistance that they got, and it would be very difficult to calculate that all out.
Yeah, and we didn't have the growth,
We didn't have the growth.
so it is very difficult. Does that answer your question, Chris, or?
Grant is definitely getting at what my question is, just because it's still a big public policy debate in Iowa about, whether the rollback was something that was effective or whether what it ended up being is a transfer of tax burden to residential property tax owners. And so it'd be helpful to be able to have some kind of ballpark figure of what that impact is, not necessarily for our budgeting purposes, but just so we understand what the full impact of that legislation continues to be.
Yeah.
And,
I think
yeah,
I think what it boils down to, Chris, in the end, when they're done backfilling, we're gonna be on the hook for about $1 million of loss of, commercial tax, because we didn't see the growth in Blackhawk County.
Right. I think that's about the ballpark.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
could
$1
simply
million.
just look at it as calculating the commercial and industrial property at 100% value rather than reducing it to 90%.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's on the backs of the taxpayers in Blackhawk County. Yes. Not just us.
so I guess that's where we're at. So if there's any discussions that you want to have, if you want to relook at anything, if you want to shift some dollars over, I had discussed, this might be a good time. If Kathy wanted to address the podium here.
Morning, Kathy.
Good morning.
Good morning, Board. I wanted to talk about the general basic fund transfer and the rural fund transfer into the secondary road fund. If you recall, or as you know, the Code of Iowa, Section 331.429, the secondary road fund, it dictates how much counties should give to the secondary road fund. And it's very explicit. The general fund, there should be 16 7/8 cents per thousand going into the secondary road fund. And then the transfer from rural services should be a tax of $3.03 per $1,000. Elsewhere in the Code of Iowa, it says that in order for counties to receive all of the secondary road fund money that is being collected from other sources, licensing fees, gas taxes, etc., the counties must contribute at least 75% of this amount that I just mentioned. Currently, in Blackhawk County, we've been contributing, is it 100% to the general fund,
Correct.
James, and 95% from the rural basic fund. I would like to ask you to increase that to 100% from the rural basic fund so that both of the funds are giving 100% of this tax collected to the secondary road fund. Our costs are increasing. Unfortunately, I keep telling you that. Much of our funding is spent on purchasing things. A lot of that is equipment, and of course, purchasing contract services to provide roads and bridges for the citizens of Blackhawk County. I feel like in discussing and hearing about the levy rates going down, I think this would be a good year to increase the rural basic fund transfer to the 100% to equalize it with the general basic fund transfer.
James, if the board was to do this, who does this have an effect on, the rural population?
Correct. This would just specifically be the rural basic fund transfer. So that would just be the rural levy, and that would be an increase of $142,781. So if you look at the screen, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
And we've heard from them people before, so we'll probably hear from them again.
Well, but the services they're provided are 100%, well, almost 100% going to
Yeah.
the people in the rural
And this-
community.
Got it?
And I thought they've been pretty accepting, I guess, of some of the things that we've been doing, so I don't know that we'll hear from many, but yeah, there'll be some. I'd recommend it. I'd suggest that we do it. If you need a motion to do that, I think, or not. Maybe we don't need it. Maybe you just go ahead and do it. I'm not sure. Does that take a board motion?
Yeah.
Are you making
One motion.
So, yeah, I was going to say, we need to put that in a motion form, but I was going to say to move just give me the hinted words here, Kathy, for what that would take to move that from 95% to 100%.
Yeah, to increase the
Real basic.
rural basic fund transfer.
Transfer. Yeah, that's what I was,
To 100%.
well, to 100%.
Yeah, you can just move it
Just do
to 100% because that's already it's
Yeah, it's already
dictated on
there.
there. Yep.
Okay,
That's in the form of a motion, Linda?
yes.
Okay. About a second.
I'll second it.
I got a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, Mr. Veeder.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Trelka,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
No.
White,
Yes. Resolution adopted. Next.
It's all yours, James. You got to
Nope,
kind
that
of.
is totally fine. I'm gonna be, again, I mean,
You had it.
we're kind of in a place where, if we want to see these, if we want to see these levy changes, are you happy with the levy changes? I mean, we're kind of at a point where, you know, decisions are to be made, and we're done kind of presenting any scenarios. So if you want to see any scenarios, if you want anything pulled out, anything added in, I'm here to show you what that does to the levy and where we're currently at. So
You've got everything in there that we've done in the course of the budget that anybody's asked for.
correct.
The libraries?
Yep. So the libraries at 170,000 as they requested, and that would be one of the lingering decisions as well. So
Well, and I think if we want to address that particular one, I was going to say that the numbers that they showed, I know the 10% was something unusual for us because we've done it at 3% before, but when they've always presented, we've always been low, and in comparison even to the counties that they gave, and I don't mean that that's a reason that we have to increase it, but when we look at the ones that they presented, the large urban areas, and show, I guess there was a range from $33 and the lowest was $18.56, and that we're at $16.72, and that we're far below the state average. And they were, I thought, very diligent in their request of us. They were only asking that we would do a 10% increase, which would put us at $17.90, and that's still going to be the lowest in the urban counties. And I just think that this is an opportunity for us to do that. And if we value our libraries, and I certainly think the services they provided before even COVID, but ones that they're showing now and how innovative they're trying to be with their populations and how many people they serve and in different areas, I think definitely if we need a motion to support the 10%, I'll make a motion to do that 10% increase for the libraries for this year.
What was the request?
The request was for a 10% increase to be $170,000, which will put us at $17.90 per capita,
And
which,
you're
like I
right,
said,
plugged in, right?
we're still low. And James has.
I do,
it in
but
there.
hey, let me pull this up because I don't think it was exactly 10%. So it
Well, the
depends
letter
on
says 10%.
depends on what we want to do here, but fiscal year 22, we funded them in the amount of $159,134. So if we were to do that, if we were to do the full 10%, that's $175,047.40. So
What did they request, James?
Well, the letter request is an increase of at least 10% to $170,000.
right,
So
which
that
is
was
a
the
little
request
bit
letter.
not very specific, to be honest with you. So they requested 170,000, but no less than 10%. But again,
Well, we can, I
Right.
guess that's
So-
unfortunate that it's not the same number, but yeah.
right. So, and I have plugged in 170,000.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that. If that's,
I'll second that motion.
okay.
Have a
So what
motion.
are we doing? I guess I'm kind of confused what you guys are doing here.
I'm sorry. What's your question, Tom?
Well, what are we doing? Are we honoring their request of
Yes.
10%, or what are we doing?
Yes.
Yes, we're honoring at 170,000, Tom.
Is that?
And that's what they requested.
That's what they
Yes.
requested. Yep.
That will be a 6.83% increase.
Thank you.
Instead of 10%,
So,
like they said.
You want to leave it that way, 170,000 then, right?
I do. I mean, I do. It's unfortunate.
Motion and a second on the
Okay.
floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Jelka,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
White,
Yes, resolution adopted.
So I'm going to share my screen one last time here. So with those in there, you're looking at the tax rates. You're looking at a overall decrease of 7.61% with everything that's in there and the changes that we've just made.
And you were proposing something else, didn't you send something else out?
The one thing that I did want to address too is these ARP dollars are lowering our capital request, and which is great, and that's what they're supposed to be doing. The one thing that I want to make this board kind of aware of is once these ARP dollars are gone, that capital request, you know, a lot of these things don't necessarily go away. And so if we were to shift some of this capital and increase our capital at least a little bit to help fund, you know, say secondary roads, some of their equipment, then what that's going to do is that's still going to lower our levy rate, but it's going to keep it a little bit more steady when we look at fiscal year 24, 25, and 26, and it's going to be less of a tax increase in those fiscal years. And that, you know, when I was looking back at, you know, why we established Fund 350, Capital Fund 351, or Capital the IT Fund 360, a lot of these were in an effort to make sure that, you know, we're taxing a consistent amount, so we're not going to be seeing these peaks and valleys in the tax rate and kind of going up and down. It's just going to be as steady as possible. And so, the one thing that I did bring up was if we were to shift some of that capital over, we're still going to be seeing an extremely large decrease in our levy, but it's going to be a little bit more flat moving forward, and that's just going to be on how you guys want to move forward and into the future. But that's just I did want to kind of warn that, you know, we did have these discussions about how low capital was this year, and that is because a lot of this capital is being shifted over to ARP. Once ARP is gone, we're going to start seeing that kind of trickle back up, and so.
Well, James, let me ask you this. There's a reason for the ARP monies. And if we don't spend it, and we go back into the tax asking for it, who's to say we're going to spend all that money down the road? And then at that time, wasn't that kind of stupid to do that? If we have the opportunity to spend some of these capital items under ARP money, I think we should jump on it and go from there, because we always have the control of capital in the future. And if you're going to see a spike in your budget in the future, then the capital goes down. That's the way it used to work all the time. So I think we should be capitalizing on this ARP, because it's not a guarantee we're going to spend all this money. And what are you going to do with it then? Give it back?
Well,
If you're for capital projects, I think we ought to use it for what we can.
Well, and you're absolutely right. By no means am I recommending that we shift capital items from the ARP list back onto the capital. But for instance, if we're looking at the capital request sheet that we have, you know, we always subtract out, you know, the engineers capital, because that's a different fund, right? And so if we were to take on, you know, and I'm ballparking here, but let's just say $200,000 of their capital, that's going to not touch the ARP funds. That's going to be all the same. The capital for the engineer's office is going to go down, so that's going to trend pretty similar, and that's going to trend upwards and not have such a spike on their end. Ours is going to trend downwards, but it's not going to be such a valley on our end. It's just going to kind of smooth everything out a little bit as far as the levy goes. And so that was my recommendation, or my at least thought that I would bring up to the board is if we were to shift some of that capital, not from ARP, but just from say secondary roads, then that would help us out in, you know, down the road when we're looking at the tax levies.
So you're cautioning us for the future.
James, do you
Right.
have a scenario ready that we can look at?
Yeah. Yes, I can pull it up here.
Yeah, because I think our goal has been to try to keep the taxes kind of consistent. We've talked about that, not have these peaks and valleys, and that's exactly what we'd be doing possibly next year or future years. So if there's something we can do to help that, I think that'd be to our benefit, to the taxpayers' benefit.
So let me stop share here real quick and let me grab this hypothetical here.
And while you're talking about that, I think that is one of the things, so the ARP money, when we've been talking about that and the investments and the possibility for that we can do in our community, I said, when we're talking about buildings and some of the things we're looking at, whether it's the sheriff's or consolidated communications or the space assessment needs, some of those things are going to be millions of dollars of projects, so, but we're going to have to get moving on.
Yes.
Moving forward on
Conclusion of
that.
that will be, we'll have more discussion on that, heavy discussion on that, I believe, in March.
Yeah, get
Correct.
this one,
That's-
get this out of the way kind of and get going on that, yeah.
Wish we'd had it done sooner,
Yeah, that would have been nice. But I'm surprised at how quickly they are going to be able to do it.
Well, are there any things that we as a board want to pull out of the budget? No, James is saying we're sitting very well, like I said, for doing the things we have. We didn't have exorbitant requests from anyone, and I don't ever think we do, but I know sometimes that we look at items and want to pull them out of the budget.
I've studied
there
the
anything-
budget and studied the budget. Some nights I laid awake thinking about it, and I'm comfortable with it as is.
As is?
Yeah, I'm comfortable as well. I think it's actually really remarkable the job that all of our departments did and that James did with them. Here we are, just the 13th of January, and we're almost finished. We got the publishing and all that stuff. The state makes us approve it twice.
Yeah.
But I know that there's other local bodies here in Eastern Iowa that most of our members haven't even probably seen the budget yet, and so it's really commendable to all of our departments and James and the board here for how well this process has gone this year.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. I think it's gone really well and appreciate the input and the work everyone's done for ARP as well. That's kind of been an additional task for everyone that's been challenging.
opened our eyes to opportunities.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, it's a godsend.
well, they said some of that money was for investment in our communities, and so
Yeah.
really to not just spend it, but invest it, so.
Things that we could have done years ago that we didn't have the money to do, that we're gonna be able to do.
Yeah,
Probably positioned better than 97, 98 other counties in the state.
I bet. Yeah, right now.
So that's what it looks like with it in there. You're looking at your rural increasing 1.79% for the tax rates, your overall decrease of 7.27. If I said that, I might have actually included the shift over to capital already in this scenario. So that's with that shift over.
So this helps smooth out the future.
Exactly.
Avoid the valley or the peak
Right,
or whatever.
yeah.
A little bit, smooth it out. Is there anything else we can be doing, I guess, or looking at doing? Does it make any sense to put funding into the IT?
We could do that.
Fund or CIP
That is another option. We could move some dollars into the IT capital fund. We could move dollars into the 351 fund.
Yeah.
We could pull some of that out of the fund balance. That would help with the unassigned fund balance and just kind of help prepare for perhaps a major IT overhaul. I mean, that industry isn't getting any cheaper. We could shift dollars over to our large capital fund, so that's gonna be there to help us with any increases in capital cost. There's a lot of things that we could be doing. I think this is a good scenario that we've put forward as is, and if we wanted to shift dollars over, we could do that with fund balance. But I think this is going to be helping position us for the future as well as take care of the things that we need to take care of right now.
What is our IT fund balance? Just curious. I know that was set up really to make sure we had ongoing funds in there available for when we had the large IT needs and that type of thing, but just curious what's in there. We have spent it down some.
$489,000.
Oh, so we do have about 500 in there then.
Yep. So I believe when it was initially set up that there was $1 million transfer in there, and we've depleted that about $500,000. So.
Okay.
So that wouldn't change your actual overall fund balance. It would just be moving it from one part of the fund balance to the other part of the fund balance, correct?
Well, when we start talking about fund balance, unassigned and assigned is kind of where we differentiate. The percentages that we're discussing, we always talk about unassigned fund balance. Mm-hmm. So if we were to shift dollars from fund balance, unassigned fund balance into these capital fund balances, then that moves it from unassigned to assigned, and so that allows us to do that. So when we talk about percentage wise, those are just unallocated dollars that the county has.
And could we do that at a later date?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we didn't do it in budget anyway. Okay.
Yep, we can do that at a later date. We would just
If we
need
want.
we would need to include that on a budget amendment, just because it is going to be an expense or a transfer out and a transfer in. So.
Okay, thank you.
So if we're good to where we are at right now, our next steps, before I start talking about ARP, we will approve the publishing of a max levy on Tuesday, and then we will hold a public hearing on February 8th. That is going to be the max levy hearing. Now, if we're good as it is right now, then that's not going to change when we move into the final. But we will approve a max levy, or the publishing of a max levy hearing to be held on February 8th, and then on February 8th we will approve that max levy, and then approve a publishing for the actual public hearing for the budget. And if that goes through and everything works there, then we will have everything done on March 8th.
March 8th?
At the very latest, yep.
Okay.
And James, I want to just make one point. It's more for the public. Is when the state legislature introduced this legislation requiring us to publish a max levy and then approve what our final one is. I think sometimes when they read the headline, they get a little confused, and it makes it sound like we're approving the maximum amount that we could possibly tax, just because kind of the verbiage of max levy, that we're taxing them as much as we could possibly do, and I think that the public maybe doesn't quite understand that. So I don't really have the right verbiage to help explain that, but so we're just emphasizing that this is an overall tax decrease, and it's not that we're squeezing every last dime out of the public that we possibly could, which is what the term max levy, I think, kind of psychologically implies.
And I'm sorry, I misspoke. That would be March 1st would be the public hearing for the final budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we need to take any type of actions? You included the positions in that were requested then, as far as.
That is all in
Everything's
that is all
included.
in there.
Just wanted to be sure that when we just say in general, that we all remember that going forward, that we did approve them by being in there. Okay. I have another question about, Colleen and General Assistance talked about us being able to raise the income guidelines that hadn't been raised in 15 years. Do we need an action for that, or can we just agree that we'll do that? What would you, that we
I
had?
think we need to have some action if we're going to be changing guidelines for providing, because these are for determining poverty for providing aid, right?
Right.
Yeah, we're going to need action.
And we
on
could
that.
do that at another budget, not another budget, another agenda item. I just meant to, if we wanted to look at that, those are two things. Positions and then those
That
guys.
should probably be a resolution on a regular board meeting.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what I meant. We don't have to do it today. We can do it next week. Thanks. Okay,
For the agenda on Tuesday.
yeah. That-
Yeah, I'll get with Colleen to
Sure.
figure that out. But
That'd be great, because,
Yeah, and when speaking with her, she wouldn't need an increase in the budget or anything.
no,
like that.
it was just
I
to make
think
sure we
it's
increased our
just-
guidelines to
Yep.
one side. Okay.
Yep.
I just, want to be certain we were all clear about the things that we requested and not later forget what we'd approved. So the positions, I think we'd been at one point in time at 450 employees, very close to at 448 or maybe, and we've continually dropped. But I think, like I say, everybody made such a great case for the positions there and how much I think it's going to improve our efficiencies and effectiveness, so
And service.
service there, yeah, and safety. So, great, so do we want to make any motions? Tom, you want to make any motions to approve the budget?
Don't really, it was, the department heads always do a good job and everything. It was a quick process, but we didn't really cut anything. If you stop and think about it, we didn't cut anything out of any budget. And then you talk about the positions. Yeah, they talked about the positions, I guess they're in there, so.
Yeah.
That's why everything went smooth, because we didn't cut anything.
Yeah. Well, they were good budgets, so, yeah, good arguments made, so great.
That's why it went smooth. We didn't, normally we get questions and pull this out or do that, but this year, present a budget, and we move on to the next one.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of things did go into ARP that would have been in here, so that might have made it a little tougher. Yeah,
Yeah, I think ARP helps
Yeah.
quite a bit.
I think so
Stars
too.
aligned.
Yep.
We don't, at
Again.
Tuesday, we have to clean something up with a motion.
No, I just meant, did you have any objections, anything we're fine moving forward? Okay.
Oh, I don't. I still not clear on all those positions. Obviously, I don't agree with the one under worry, but time will tell if that was a good move.
Oh, well, yeah, but we can always discuss those as far as the specifics, you mean, about where they're positioned?
Yeah, that just doesn't make sense to me with all the different laws that he's gonna be able to keep up with it down there. I think it should be HR, but anyway, we'll
Yep.
see what happens.
Yep, okay, great. All right.
So if we're good to move forward, we'll start talking about ARP projects phase 2. We will include this on the budget, but it'll be an expense and then just a fund balance reduction. So we will see it on there, but it won't affect any of the levies. So I'll kind of start at the bottom here, just to touch base. We are at a total of $6.6 million. We approved 1.8 million in phase 1. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we're at. We were allocated 25.5 million. And if you remember, we had talked about these two different buckets. The bucket of all of these expenditures that qualify for the bill, that help prevent COVID-19, that help with the negative impacts, and then there's a lost revenue portion that we can use to expense anything for any county expenditure that we see fit. We had ran that calculation, and what our calculations showed is it freed up $4.3 million in dollars that we can spend outside of help preventing COVID-19 or its negative economic impacts. Since the final rule came out, they actually just did away with the calculation and they just ramped that up to $10 million. So it is a part of the it's a part of the final rule now that instead of the 4.3, we now have 10 million to spend on any county expenditure that we see fit, and then 15.5 million will need to be helping prevent COVID-19 in some way, shape, or form. So I did want to just touch base on that and kind of put out that reminder that not all of these projects have to fit this bill. And in fact, a lot more of these projects don't have to fit this bill now with that legislation change. So, so again, that total is 6.6 million, and then I'm just going to scroll to the top here, and we can break it down by department. And again, none of these have to be decided on today. It's a lot of just food for thought discussion. If you want to make a decision today, you can, but we definitely don't have to.
So that total 6.6 million is everything phase 1, phase 2 submitted thus far?
Nope, that would just be phase 2 of what you're looking at right in front of you.
And phase 1 was how much, James?
1.8. So you have about 8.4 altogether out of the 25
In phase 2?
altogether.
No, you mean total?
Yep, total.
Okay.
So, if you want any clarity on these, I would suggest the department head kind of stepping up and talking about these. I know the high level of these, but obviously the department's going to know the best. So, we did talk about transitioning the vehicles out for the health department. So you'll see some vehicles for the health department to start off with. You'll see workstations for the clinic rooms, backdrop for a health department logo, security doors, and then more security for the 5th floor wing hallway. That's going to total $163,600.
So we can leave that stuff in there, but at a later time, could it come out?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like after we get the space committee report
Yep.
back on what we,
Yeah,
what we're gonna be doing?
And we kind of touched base on that as well. Once the space study comes back, I mean, we're going to have a lot more clarity on,
Right.
on what we need as as far as departments and buildings and that kind of thing. So that is going to provide quite a bit of clarity for us.
So are any of these like an urgent need or something that we should be looking at, like immediate? Because to me, then maybe we've got the
So you wanna get done?
consolidated communications, we've got the space assessment, some of those things that could shift totally what our thinking is on this, unless there were needs that we really should.
I would say that the security is a critical need, because I've walked back there and the employees were shocked.
Oh, and you
I was
surprised
back
them?
there amongst them. I mean,
They get shocked a lot.
I guess I would let the department head speak to the necessity. We did talk about a phase 1 and a phase 2, and this is where they felt this project landed. If we did want to look at shifting it over to a more urgent project, we can definitely do that. But I personally don't want to necessarily speak to that. I would let the department head speak to that.
Sure. Well, I was just thinking that some of that we mentioned spending the money like we did in phase 1, and if we continue to keep spending it, then if we do see needs that we have,
Right.
we'll maybe not be positioned to do it. I'm not sure, but
I think the sheriff department had 2 great projects, and the presentations were excellent. I like the one in the jail. I think it makes sense. But as I stated in the beginning, and I think another supervisor too said the same thing, I'm not going to spend our money to increase tax dollars. And that particular position there is going to increase 2 employees. And so as much as I think that's a good program, I'm not going to support that one that's in the jail. I will the one out at the shooting range. But if it takes tax dollars down the road, it's not sustainable, then I'm not going to support them.
is that 2 positions? 10, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Probably about 200,000 with benefits and wages.
Tom, it's 10 positions.
it's 10 positions, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not, if it's not sustainable with our money, I'm 10% in our county.
Yeah, as I look at, the request, some of them, I think we definitely need to wait for the space assessments need, but I see,
Right.
the health department's current request, I would be comfortable supporting that today. Conservation, maintenance, I think we need to wait on some of that, especially, things like the 5th floor HVAC, because we might be moving away from some of that because of after the space needs. So that should wait, and that's a big ticket item. IT, I could see that we could move forward now. Medical examiner, elections, VA. Those would be the ones I think that I'd be comfortable moving forward with today or in the near future.
And James, you're having constant dialogue with the department heads and elected officials that oversee these projects, correct?
Can you repeat your question?
You're in constant communication with the department heads and elected officials that
Yeah.
are pursuing these projects.
Absolutely.
Because I think the department heads are pretty mindful of what projects could be impacted by the space needs assessment. Like, down in the county attorney's office, I mean, I think the color is horrendous. It's depressing. I had pushed, and many had pushed for getting it painted, but who
Not if
knows
they're
what the
moving.
space needs assessment is going to bring. So that's the pause button has been hit on that.
Yeah.
We just painted everything
I
down
think
there.
Brian picked
It's
that,
ugly.
didn't he? I think Brian picked it, didn't he?
I was gonna say, talk to Rory and,
Yeah.
because we just painted the whole floor.
I thought it was his choice, but maybe
New
not.
carpet down. Yeah.
Well, maybe, I know you haven't had a committee meeting though lately. I was going to say maybe that's a place for the committee meeting to get together and see if there are some urgent needs or things that they think should be brought forward before the space assessment. But yeah, no, I think there's obviously some things in here we could go ahead and approve. It's not that we don't agree with.
What was the medical examiner? Chris brought that up. What was their request, or do they have a request? I didn't think they had a request.
For a vehicle.
The vehicle, but do we
We
put
never
that?
decided on that, did we?
Well, sort of.
Sort of.
No.
We just approved the budget, I was going to say, from doing those things in the request. But yes, we had moved his vehicle to ARP, didn't you, James?
We did, yeah. So the medical examiner spoke about getting a vehicle and doing his own transportation, and so that was one thing that we'd be able to do out of ARP funds is get a vehicle to then help with the transportation costs of those bodies, and so that was something that when discussing, we wanted to help lower those costs. And this was a good way to do it. So
And we need
Yeah.
action. We should take action
So we
on
can then.
this
Yeah,
funding today.
The largest cost on that was, he estimated between 50 to 60 trips for Mercy One ambulance. And I believe it was roughly, when everything was at, is around $700. I requested to James that they may negotiate with them, because that's a lot of money to those folks. At 60 trips a year, that they could negotiate that cost down, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Plus, that keeps us out of the maintenance of a vehicle, the drivers of the vehicle, the insurance of the vehicle, the liability of the vehicle, and different things like that. So I'd like to see them pursue negotiations with Mercy One, because I can't believe they're going to let that contract go with as many trips that they make up there for that dollar amount.
So I would offer a motion today to approve the Phase 2 request from Health Department, Conservation, IT, Elections, and VA. It sounds like the other departments, we still have questions, and are really also contingent on the space needs assessment.
Yeah, I could live with that too.
Chris, can you repeat those?
Yeah,
Departments, please.
Health Department, Conservation, IT, Elections, and VA.
And then let's get some information on that medical examiner one so that we can kind of make sure we know which direction we're going on that, so.
So which ones would that exclude? Medical examiner, sheriff's office,
Maintenance.
and maintenance. Okay.
If we want to include the evidence intake building, I'm comfortable with that too.
Yes.
Oh, what?
The evidence.
Going on, shooting range.
Yes.
I could live with that one, other than, yeah, I could live with that one.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Evidence intake building.
Or the evidence intake.
James,
And that can always change too, right, James?
Well, not if we.
The only problem is those requests like that one there comes to us and they don't even have a solid engineering cost on that.
Yeah.
It's an all estimate. I mean, their conservation actually goes out, RFPs for an engineering firm and they have all the details. This one here, there's no firm cost on anything, what has to be done or anything that I know of, and I could be wrong on that.
Well, so the one issue with that is when we're looking at ARP funding, we need to be mindful of all the bidding requirements, but B, we can't spend ARP dollars on any engineering that we don't complete or don't move forward with. And so we're kind of caught into this middle area where,
Right.
you know, do we approve a project or do we approve the engineering of a project, then determine how much it's going to cost before we approve the cost of it? It's kind of in this weird spot to where we have to talk about the project before we talk about the engineering. Otherwise we're actually shifting the engineering costs over to the county, and so that we're kind of caught in that weird position. So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
do you have a new amount?
We have to bid out the construction cost too, don't we, James?
Yeah, I mean we have to bid out the engineering and the construction.
Construction.
Do you have a new amount, James? Were you able to tabulate that quickly?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was not tabulating that here. Your sum is $2,781,386.
Say that again?
$2,781,386.
Okay.
Is that with or without the evidence building?
That is with.
Okay. And are folks comfortable on the evidence building, or do we want to wait? Do we have more questions to explore on that?
Yes.
I think that's an estimate, Chris. I mean, I don't have a problem going with it, but I honestly think that's going to be estimate and probably a low number.
Right.
So actually, Tony's in here, and he just said 1.5, and so that would increase to 3.281386.
Oh, sorry, say it again.
3,281,386, and that is including the evidence intake building, Chris.
All right, so that amount is included in the motion, Chris?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
In the neighborhood.
Is there a second?
And there was a second, yes, I believe.
You'll second it?
And Tom, if nobody did, I will second it.
I have a motion on the floor for a move forward. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Leyland,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Jelka,
Yes.
White.
Yes, resolution adopted.
That's all I have for today, unless there's any other topics that want to be brought up, or we'll, like I said, we'll get that max levy publication resolution on the agenda for Tuesday. We'll hold that on February 8th. Then on February 8th, we'll request for publishing for the budget hearing to be held on March 1. And again, we can, up until February 8th, we can adjust these to where we see fit. So.
Sure. So when you get those adjustments made, you'll send that, or can send that out to us.
Yeah, yep, I can send
So we have
anything
the
out
most
that,
updated.
that you need to. I'll solidify what we've done today, send that out, and just make sure everyone's all on the same page.
Sure. Thank you. ARP might be as well. That-
Yep, and I can,
All the updates will be
You bet.
adjusted.
yep, I can do it.
Sounds good.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, well, before we adjourn, I did have one question that we should have talked about, I guess, on Tuesday. It was the Conservation Board. They're short a board member. And so I think we have 3 or 4 people maybe that need to be interviewed. If anybody wants to do interviews, or we need to probably do that. I know they have a meeting tonight. They're short a person, so the sooner we can get that done, the better.
I can do an interview if they do it on Zoom.
Okay.
Anybody else interested? I mean, others can too, because it's usually 2 at least, but okay.
Health Department has
Sorry.
a vacancy.
But I don't think we have any applicants yet, do we?
No, I'm just saying we have.
Oh, that you have a vacancy, yeah. Thank you.
Or should we have James talk to Mercy One Ambulance on that medical examiner?
Yeah, I think so, so we can resolve that, yep. And
Or
then,
the other decide if they'll negotiate that price?
and if we do want to do the vehicle, then I think we need to decide that too, because if we start saving money, we might as well start saving
Yeah,
money.
I was just gonna say that if we don't do it and Mercy One doesn't negotiate that price, then we might need to look at increasing the transportation cost just with that legislation change. But more to come on that.
Yeah, okay.
There'll be a lot of extra costs involved too that we're not looking at, like Tom said though, that we're gonna be on the hook for.
Well, we need to know what those are, yeah.
Yeah.
Are
That's
they,
all.
is the medical examiner and the assistant, are they considered county employees?
That's what I'm, no,
No,
so that car wouldn't be considered ours then, right?
So is that car county car, or, I mean, how's all the logistics gonna work on that?
That's a great question. I would have to get a little
Just
bit
need
more
more
information,
information.
just
Yeah.
and maybe meet with Mike and kind of hammer that out.
Yeah.
So.
great. Well, we know other counties are doing it and using it, so yeah, that'd be helpful to help us get that. Thanks. Thank everybody.
Anything else to come before us?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
No.
I'll make a motion
Not
to
from
adjourn.
Second?
all in favor, aye?
Aye.
I
We are adjourned.